Welcome back, all. This is Gamer1745 here. I'm glad I went and checked on this event. I don't know what it is, but one of sort of a complicated event that I coded, and I'm not the best at that. Talk to the D-Worm if you want a good complicated event coded. He does it really well. You can learn a lot from his coding. And I looked at the code. I can't see what's wrong with it. I don't know. So with a different event that's before this that was making some of them below it not fire. Probably an end of code thing is wrong or something. Don't know what it is. Some way down the list were firing, but a bunch weren't. So we may see a bunch of things pop up. We're still fairly early in the game. I've uploaded a new version of the sort of main file. You can see it on the Third Reich events thread page. Last page has it. Just simply download that text file, put it where it says in the directory, have it overwrite. Right now I just cut the event that sort of the second event that you can go to war with Switzerland over. You can still declare war under normal means, but Third Reich events should have two events that could cause war. Obviously we went through the first one over Gustav just a short while ago, but there's a later possibility that could cause a war. I cut that event out. I'll try to figure out what the problem is. It worked in the previous versions. I'll go compare, see, whatever, but I just wanted to get it up there as fast as I can, and I know this will be a day or so later, but I'm just explaining what's happened, just in case you're not paying attention to the forum, and so you see what this is. And so I was test firing a bunch of events, and they were coming up to saying, event doesn't exist, doesn't exist, and I could look at the code from this thing, and it did exist. So finally worked my way back up the thing, found what the problem was, so I cut it out. Hopefully, maybe by the time you see this, I'll have a new version or two new versions of TRE out. We'll see. But so minor loss right now. If you're way into the game, you may have a bunch of events fire. We may be having a few here fire as well. I don't know exactly how many were, but it was, I would say 20 or 30 events at least that were being blocked from possibly firing. So I manually fired this one. This one should have happened back in March, and here we're already in May. So Haus des Radfunk, basically House of Broadcasting, as the event describes here in 1931, they built this huge building for this. And this is much bigger than the BBC at the time. There's a similar event for the BBC. Not quite as big, but you can see, and this building still exists today. It survived the war, basically intact. It looks like there's a huge auditorium here, the way that this sort of goes wider, that down in there, but you see rooftop plaza there, maybe some other auditoriums, but this is a huge radio broadcasting center that based in Berlin, and it did programming that got rebroadcast all over Germany. Plus there was also locally developed shows, of course, as well. And so I, with again doing research, I thought that this pre-existing thing deserves to give Germany all three of the basic levels of radio broadcasting. So glad we did this. Yes, this is both a playthrough for me and a playtest. I did play through an earlier version that didn't seem to have the bug, but something, I don't know what, caused some flaw in coding here. So okay, and so which is supposed to gives these effects. So we have the effects now, which should have happened earlier, which you will notice. Consumer goods during wartime and peacetime -2, territorial pride up 3, national unity 0.1% increase, and these are ongoing effects. National unity here, ruling party support. I didn't make the judgments on how much these should be. These are all just the minimum level for black ice. And like I say, I knew the BBC had a major one. They get 2 of the 3. The U.S. had a radio boom going on at this time, sort of like the later .com boom. That there were huge amounts of radio stations, but most of them were very local. Most of them weren't part of the major networks that later developed, and they were all over the place. They started, well, before this they were starting to be properly licensed, but it was a massive radio boom. But I don't consider it a centralized system like the BBC or the German system here, and I don't know about the radio system in France or these other countries, but I can't imagine, I mean, I may be entirely wrong, but I can't imagine a similar system functioning in Romania at this time. Not that they didn't have a state-run radio, or not that there weren't radios, but I don't think it was as pervasive, as all-powering as something like the German radio system. So that's why I justify giving the event to Germany and Britain, because they have a centralized system. I really, quite honestly, don't think Japan nearly had, I may be wrong, as pervasive of, and it's radio on both ends as I'm looking at this. Like I was talking about the U.S., there, radios everywhere. They were starting to put radios in cars. I mean, only just starting in the early 30s. As a reasonably common feature, but everywhere in America was getting a radio in the infrastructure way, but there wasn't a centralized system putting out American propaganda, if you will. It did develop during the war, and they did develop it, but I don't know that Japan had nearly as pervasive home ownership of radios and as much production out of it. Could be wrong. When I get around to making the Japanese model, I'll be looking into some of that some more. But so that's why I justify that for Germany. So this reduces by 4, which we should have been having for a while there. A couple of months for that. The basic effect. Okay. That's it. Now we're back to regular scheduled broadcasting. Excuse me. As they would say. Or continuing to play. This last day, and this is sort of the end of this, I've been pumping these out just to get them, because I wanted to get 4 episodes up to sort of start the series up, and then we'll be over to daily updates with the series. Now, as you can see, Herman and a few others want me to mostly or always play with the political map. While I think it's quite useful and can quite show that off right now, I don't quite honestly think it's so useful at this stage of the game, because borders aren't changing, things aren't happening that much. But we can have it here for some. We were still at a relative peace in China. We have wars going on in Ethiopia, or Abyssinia as it was known at the time. And we're still at peace in, well, to say still at peace in Spain, the nationalists that rose basically largely because there was a Red Terror going on in Spain at this time. They were, they were abusive landowners, and all of the worst propaganda about the stuff has an element of truth about the situation in Spain prior to the Civil War. But there was an ongoing Red Terror that wasn't so much being done by the state like you would find in Soviet Russia, but the Spanish Republic wasn't diligently trying to find the murderers. You see some revolts are breaking out because of the situation in Spain, though I don't think that's the actual thing. So that there's a lot of unrest in Spain, and so it was sort of a conservative or traditionalist reaction to it that caused the Spanish Civil War. And there wasn't meant to be a Spanish Civil War. That you should be clearly known. It was meant to be a coup against the government that failed, that turned into a civil war. There wasn't a, oh, we're gonna have a war now. No, we're gonna have a coup. Okay, let's see. Several events just popped up, mostly probably because the backlog just got over and it's the second day of the month. Okay, new buildings for the nation. Let's see the plans. I want to do this while we still have the black shorts. Deputy Führer Hess, after reading one of his favorite British authors, thinks the NSDAP should support the black shorts. Well, I had to put this in because I just thought it was funny. The images are from a modern TV series there. And the symbol, though, is described in a book and gives opportunity to send money or 9 fool, which is the right answer. And it's P.G. Wodehouse's The Code of the Worcesters is the book that the black shorts were introduced on as a parody of the black shirts, or the BFU, the British Union of Fascists, which had a blue lightning bolt similar symbol, but it was blue instead of black. So that's the correct answer. That's the period cover of the book. So I just, once in a while, I present real history here because we get the real history, but once in a while my sense of humor comes through on some of these things. So yeah, okay. And this was another event that was delayed. Okay, Deutscher Freshner Radfunk, Freshner Sender, Paul Nichto, Berlin, and this is the broadcasting house outside of Berlin, or the production studios, and their major antenna for television in Germany in 1936. They were broadcasting regionally over the airwaves, television. Until I did this research, I didn't know about this in Germany. I knew that at this time in New York they were doing television, and also I've also found out they were also doing it in London. And before the war, I don't think quite this early, but just before the war they started to do it in Paris. It's very localized in sort of greater Berlin. It wasn't all over Germany. And set up, and they also talked about it was increased, and they had major viewing for the Olympics, sort of theater set up with huge screens. I think they were a projection system of some sort. They weren't glass television screen for that. And we'll get to see a television, I think, later on, if everything works right. So yes, so we want to do it. It's on. You can decide not to support it, but I would suggest a little bit of cost. Right there. And there's the sort of test pattern version, and Ursula Panskek, sorry, and she would start each day saying Achtung, Achtung, Freshener, Nickpau, blah blah blah. Sorry, Germans. If you want to see her doing that and some of the skits, this is stuff that's on YouTube, and I have a link to it if you go to my channel. You can go down to the movies that are associated with this movie. This is stuff there seems to be entirely free of any propaganda. It's just sort of early bad Ed Sullivan skits, to me at least. If you know what Ed Sullivan was, I hope most people do. He's long gone, but you see clips with the Beatles or whatever. Sort of variety shows and that kind of thing. And it was only on a few hours a day and that kind of thing. So I thought that was interesting. But if you notice in the previous event, later on Germany developed an anti-ship missile that would broadcast back a television picture. And you could look at the television picture being broadcast back to the airplane, and the airplane could fly that anti-ship missile right into the ship. They did sort of figure out what was going on to some degree, the Americans, I mean the British or whoever. And so they eventually started to jam some of the signals. And of course, the aircraft could, because they would like use twin-engine bombers, could hang around well outside of any effective anti-aircraft range and accurately fly the missiles into the ships. But of course, if you just got any fighters up there, and the Americans had lots of them and controlled the air, you could shoot down these the aircraft controlling the missiles, and then the missiles would just wander off, and there was no internally good seeking system on it. You had to have a human behind it, guiding it in from the aircraft. So that was the way to defend the ships, was simply put up good air cover. So, but the Germans, but the television research that was done for this helps later in the war with the missiles. Marine Herr Remmel-Lebo. This is a major monument to First World War I naval personnel lost in the war. It still exists. You can go visit it. That's Hitler there visiting one of the ceremonies, if not the opening ceremony or whatever, and there's other things. So it was pride in the German Navy. And, you know, if you try to pull the National Socialist politics out of it and just leave it as German, national politics, it's still there, and it represents them. And I don't know if they've dedicated it to World War II losses or not, but as I researched it for this period, it was dedicated to World War. So, cost us some supplies to build it. And a brief, because until June 10th, and we're just 2 days into it, so just 8 days of heavy loss, and you don't get the choice. Okay. Broadcasting, we want to see the new season as well. Okay. Now, because we're in it and we've got a long time, we're still June 36, we're going to do this. Go for the entertainment shows, which should reduce our consumer goods needs even more, because we're entertaining the population with radio and around Berlin television. But yes, that's probably a little overdone there. Okay. General Walter Wever. He was an army general. First World War. I'm not sure that he was a general in the First World War. Decided he wanted to be in part of the Air Force, so he transferred over from the Army, and he was, I do believe, one of the 100,000 German soldiers and officers that maintained during the Reich during the Weimar days, and actually supposedly a very good one. He taught himself, well, I mean, he had teachers, but got himself to fly, and he was a pretty good pilot. Too old to be a fighter pilot by this time, but so he came on as Chief of Staff of the Luftwaffe. He would have probably been a very big asset in organizing up the Luftwaffe. He knew, and if you know the uniform, that's a very early Third Reich era uniform for the Luftwaffe. Very well understood organizations, very well understood the Army, how to organize it, and he would have really been able to organize it, the Luftwaffe, probably better than it was. And he was, I believe if I get this right, he was hurrying back or something, flying, and didn't pull off some part of the wing, little clips on the wings or something to hold in the whatevers. You can tell how much of a pilot I am. And he died in real life. We have a 20% chance of General Wever living. His other big thing is he wanted heavy bombers. He was like Arthur Bomber Harris and Curtis LeMay big bomber proponent platforms, not just as a support the army operation that the Luftwaffe was designed for, at least at the beginning of the war. Not that he didn't want that too, but he was a heavy bomber proponent, so we've got him so we don't lose that event. Okay. Invest in our schools. This is a GGA event, I do believe. Okay, let's see. We can invest 100,000 money. No, 1,000 money, not 100,000. 2,000 supply. Again, I'm a little iffy on the money things here. Lose 10 manpower. I guess that's the staffing of the schools. We'll gain 1,000 officers, which we could use. See, we're down at 66%. Bonuses to a bunch of pets. More no need. We'll go with this. To get this a bit. We've yet to get the second radio event bonus. Okay, West Wall program. As you may have noticed, Germany is currently without any defenses along the West Wall because they didn't have any in 1936. Especially that part was still under at least nominal French control, though no longer military occupied. So you want to start the Pioneer program. This is just the start. It will cost us some. Unless you really plan on having this a very mobile force, I would suspect there would be a significant fight on the west while you're taking on Poland. Unless you're just going to try to hold minimally in Poland and attack France is the very first thing. I would strongly suggest start the Pioneer program. Grand Battle Plan Advance. Yay. We want to do that. We've done that. Now we've moved in. Well, since we from previous event we got a few days bonus on that, we'll start researching it. Do let me know if you think I'm going too long about the politics and the world situation at the time. I don't mean to slow the event up or bore you. That's not my intention at all. The Schweizer National Front. There were several significant National Socialist movements in Switzerland at this time. They were significant. They weren't major as in getting majority, coming anywhere near a majority of Swiss voters. A few regions they got pretty strong in. They did get people elected a little bit, but they were fairly marginal party. Before this time period, I think around 33, Switzerland banned. They were the first country to sort of ban the swastikas. They banned, because they didn't just want to ban swastikas, they banned all foreign political symbols. So that would include communism or whatever, the foreign political symbol. So they adopted an early style of the Swiss flag with the cross going all the way to the edges. And as you can see here, for their party pins, they used a similar cross. And they also developed or used a mace added to that. As part of their internal Swiss. So they could have, fascist or National Socialist symbol as long as they were Swiss. So Horus was their shout like Heil. At some point. Oh, if you think I'm nearly done with TRE and what I sort of have in mind to do, I've not even gotten halfway. Okay, people, there is I know a lot of people give me event ideas, and I appreciate that. Really appreciate people that sort of work with me and partially build the events or whatever. But I'm building up material for all those things. Like I worked with a Swiss player to help develop some of the Swiss stuff. I've worked with George 1941. Hope he's doing well. To deal with some of the Czech stuff, but I got material for the Belgians, the Dutch, the Norwegians, the Swedes, everybody that, I'm not even halfway done there on what I have want to do at some point. List for stuff to do with various nations. Tag der SA Gruppe Nordsee. One of the many, and I got a tinny for the day and poster. This is just not necessarily from that day, but one of the North Sea SA group photos I was able to find. One of the many sort of days out that promoted the SA and National Socialism and recruiting and all that stuff. So those are just sort of symbolic of what was happening all over Germany at this time. I did the SA Ritter counters, and I'm actually sort of proud of them because I just took one of those and blacked it out, so I thought it looked cool. They're weak units, but hey, they're helping with internal security. We're appeasing them now, so it's all green. But if we have events or emergencies, they're useful. No, I haven't gone in and assigned leaders to all of them yet. Just take a lot of time. I may do that off camera soon. See the terrain. Okay, we got a new. What is it? It popped off the thing. Truck and prime mover reliability has improved. We'll stop researching that for the time being. Switch over to armor plate thickness. Make our panzers thick armored. We'll wait for a couple more of these to pop up. Come on, a good one. Somewhere like Saudi Arabia or Iran, don't they want to trade with us? We want to influence them. Okay. Hungary, 50 supplies, sure. Won't last long, sure. Cuba, okay. Small amount. Even Chile. Since we mentioned some of the countries, let's see if we can give them a supply. Yes. No, they don't want any supply. sell us some rares. We absolutely need them right now, but no. Hopefully sell them some supplies. No, oh well. Worth looking at. Mexico, no thank you. Okay, deep battle doctrine has advanced. We've got both of those being researched. Welded plate armor construction has advanced, which allows us to advance in other areas. Obviously, siege has a bunch of negatives, but it is necessary to grow. I think we will work on a medium velocity gun here. Now we're building cash reserves. TRE does add a few, I think it's 9 province pictures for Germany. Garmisch Partenkirchen Winter Olympics, it's a period picture of that, looking out over it and noticing it. Don't think it's photoshopped in or anything, or airbrushed or whatever. Ski jumper, and they caught in the photo from looking down the mountain there. And Bad Reichswall, that's obviously Hitler's house. Those are the famous steps that you see all the people walking up to. So added a few of those instead of just the generic countryside pictures. Well, that's from the picture events that are put in. There are not just Third Reich events. Now, to me that's a little jarring having that in color. I would have just either put that in grayscale or sepia tone, or try to find a period picture of it, one of the two. But a nice picture. And I would have used it just, like I say, grayscale. As soon as I do this, something will pop up, but that's okay. Or maybe not. Steel armor casting. I think both of those are enough so that we'll be able to get these when other things, we'll be able to get those when we come. Yeah, we're waiting on getting a few more of these researched up. Should have been doing this already, so we'll switch over to that. But I want to get this. This is one that I'm willing to tech rush to do. I want to build transports, invasion craft, earlier, and to be able to operate in the Mediterranean and beyond before we take on the Soviet Union effectively. Okay, Secretary of Public Information. Okay, don't know if I mentioned this, but in the version of TRE that's for this Let's Play, I've removed the file's still there. I removed all the sort of random political events that were in there. To me, they're just too gamey. They're just too much of a game. Roll the dice, see what you get kind of stuff. I don't like that. I'm perfectly happy for political events. Obviously, you see a lot of here in the mod if they're based somewhat on history, or if somebody thought out a particular, well, what if? Well, what if Hess shot Goebbels or something? You know, I don't know. But you come up with a decent story, give it some sort of plausible background to it. I'm perfectly happy to have it in, but just to have these various generic events that could happen in any sort of dictatorship or democracy or whatever, and I removed all of them for all the countries, so it's not just for Germany. It's not to give me a benefit and not in another nation, but you can still research this, which normally helps with those, for a couple of reasons. One, obviously, it does reduce your 2% manpower, but it gives you 2% additional leadership. But also, you still have the propaganda fails once the war starts, so you want to have a few of these research to keep that from happening. I haven't totally nerfed or taken away all of Black Ice's stuff by any means, but a few things just bothered me, and a few that, you know, like that, were just sort of random. Yeah, okay, they were actually sort of they were generic but well thought out, and the genericness sort of goes, I didn't want to go there. Okay, let's see. We're going to start doing some aircraft research. Let's get the engines being researched. Bunch of aircraft will use that. Oh, we're in the red here. Cancel that. Okay. Sudeten Deutsches Party. This is the Sudeten German party there. Interesting. Fairly early picture. You can see their flags and stuff. Be aware it will come and play an important role. Don't know if before we get into making a version for Hearts of Iron 4, I do at some point want to go into more detail in the leading up to the Austrian takeover. Really haven't done that. Match spelling victory. One of the few images I just sort of left as is instead of putting other stuff on it. Just sort of a striking pose. Victory, yay. We gain national unity, lose dissent, popularity. Okay, America's butt there. Joe Louis. So, Ireland somehow stole our blueprints. How interesting. Okay. Now we'll do some engine research there. Oh, a new industrial zone. Advanced used to be called heavy industry. Basically, I think this will allow us to have other events trigger because of greater levels. It's here now, it's 38, so we need to stop that. We'll switch this over to twin engine aircraft armament research. And so, minus some manpower, we need people working in the factories. 1% IC, 1% IC efficiency, supplies, reduce metals. Only one that really hurts there at all is rare materials. just because we're trying to build up a stockpile, as you can see. This was interesting. One of the collector sites I frequent has some very good scholars on it, and they found, and this is the headline from it, the regulations from roughly this date in 1936. They put out a new directive for all the SA guard booths all over Germany, because they were individualized, shall we say. There wasn't a uniform standard SA pattern. You're probably seeing the black, white, red, or whatever line for the army, but this was for the SA. In the description, they actually put, drawings and just how big it was supposed to be. There's one of the few pictures that were found of it, the best one. I looked, couldn't find anything in color, but that's basically blood red, and you can tell at least part of it's glossy. So you can see imagine this blood red box. Had it above the swastika there, had a little peephole, so if someone was coming up and raining, you could just peep out through the hole. So blood red box, white there, and black swastika, sort of dramatic, I thought. Evil guys, but I sort of like their touch of drama. So, okay, so this will invest in this will help our installation security. So, much better SA security around Germany. Okay, well, the Hindenburg is doing really well, flying around, taking passengers, showing off Germany to people. So we get to build another, because there is currently the Graf Zeppelin, LZ-127, I think, is the number. And saw earlier, I think it was earlier, I know it's sometime in 1936, the Graf Zeppelin 1 and the Hindenburg flying together over German city. The Graf Zeppelin's getting a bit dated, a bit tired. In limited use, they're sort of using it to take mails and limited number of passengers down to South America during the good weather seasons. So we get to build the Graf Zeppelin 2 to replace it. A new, even larger than the Hindenburg. I think it's larger, about the size, I don't know. So we're starting production on that. Now this is an event from the D-Worms mods, which mainly deal with other nations, though some of their relations are dealing with Germany. This is the Nobel Prize. Dr. Nobel was the guy who sort of discovered dynamite. And, well, dynamite is nitroglycerin mixed with like sawdust or other stabilizing material. And it was great for warfare. And he made a huge amount of money out of it for warfare and got guilty feelings or whatever and decided to create a peace prize. Well, the 1935 award, so this is 36 and 0, but for the previous year, were awarded to Karl von Ostrensky, a German journalist who sort of imprisoned and we don't like. Historically, they refuse departure, or we can allow departure. Both of them have positive and negative aspects. We're just going to go with the history one since it's historical. We don't want the embarrassment of having a German dissident get a major international prize. event. Ordnungspolizei. Merge our police forces to form that. Interesting little story here. I guess is a decent time to tell it. We've talked about it on the message forum, but I know a lot of people don't read this stuff for TRE, or it's sort of old. Shortly after Hitler came to power, driving around Berlin, he had his, SS guards with him in the car, and they noticed this car following them around Berlin. So they tried to sort of lose it, and then they took Hitler. Normally, he never learned to drive, but he was driven around in a very sort of powerful car, and took off and finally got away from these guys, and reported this to the authorities later that night. It was in the evening. Come to find out, it was the Gestapo following Hitler, because Berlin is in Prussia, and the Gestapo was sort of the internal security element of the Prussian police, and the head of the Prussian police and the head of the Gestapo at the time was Hermann Göring. So at the time, Gestapo started pre-National Socialist. For a time, it was not anywhere associated with the SS, and so they weren't communicating well to each other, because I don't know whether it was Göring himself or one of the other people. Oh yes, you know, these were sort of the political security type guys. Yeah, you protect the head of government, because he was the head of government at the time, not the head of state yet. And whatever, and just didn't coordinate it with the sort of party security people, so there's a little bit of a row. So Germany, before the Nazis came to power, was a patchwork of varying authorities, and the Prussian police, and try to draw the map of Prussia, it wasn't contiguous even here between East and West. There were, little bits and pieces of Prussia here and there, and whatever. And it was this really weird system. And one of the asking some questions about the German language, and one of the guys posted that he has 3 family Lutheran Bibles from the 19th century, and they were from different parts of Germany. And there's completely 3 different versions of German in them, and very different. And so it was the National Socialists who were unifying the German language, the German state, the German outlook on a lot of these types of things. So, which putting sense into a chaotic situation left over from the Holy Roman Empire, that part of it's a good thing. So we can do that, or just leave it alone. We're going to lose some supplies, 2%, till the end of the game, but we'll reduce our revolt risk, which will help. Right now we don't need that here because we're all green, but once we start occupying other places, reducing revolt risk by 1% is useful. And we'll get a bunch of police units to help maintain control in occupied territories. Okay, I think this episode has gone on long enough. I hope you've enjoyed it. We will be continuing with daily updates. Please like the videos, please post comments, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. Thanks so much. We'll see you later.